back to a good warm day, because propolis, if you've worked with propolis, during the winter it's almost like glass. It's very fragile, breaks easy. Uh, during the summer, it's just sticky and gooey because it warms up. How many of you have had trouble with propolis on your hands? Okay.
And how do you get that off?
A good way to get it off is wash your hands in a what does alcohol come? 90%, 85. A high percentage of alcohol, just rubbing alcohol, that usually does a good job of taking it off your hands.
Well, forget about your hands. What happens when you get on other things that are more important?
Like clothes?
Or carpet.
Well, let me tell you something. My wife has a rule. That is, when I walk to the house, our back porch is pretty secluded. We got woods all around
That's
us.
a strip.
She asked me, first of all, I can't go in the house with shoes on. And secondly, I can't go in the house if my clothes are all dirty, drippy with honey or propolis or whatever. If there is propolis on the rug in my house, all hell breaks loose.
I figured that out too.
If you try to remove it from a colored carpet, you'll end up probably leaving spots that are very clear to see, such as bleach. You bleach out some of the color, and that's not good.
Put yourself a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher, freeze it, and then vacuum it up.
There you go. There you go.
It's that easy.
If you can vacuum it up. Yeah. Okay.
It should be cold.
Can you get it off your leather gloves?
Can you get it off of your leather gloves? Again, you could wash them with alcohol.
Wouldn't it make the leather?
I use some leather.
You've got to work leather. Leather, if you ever wash gloves, leather gloves, they get stiff and hard. You have to get in there and work them so that you loosen them up again. Okay, you can put a little bit of oil on them.
I went for some leather cleaner for the soap, and that was pretty good. Got used to rub my gloves.
You know, these are things that we need to have in our newsletter when we come up with issues, so we could share these things with everybody in the club besides ourselves, because these are useful tips. And if you have found anything like that, let me just encourage you to write a little article and send it to Barry, because it would be most helpful to Barry, because he's always looking for fillers for the newsletter, and it'd be extremely helpful to anybody in the club who has this problem to deal with and doesn't know how to deal with it. Such as, take your wife out to supper and get her a real good meal when you screw up her rug.
I get on this thing.
Yeah. Okay. One last thing I want to mention, I've already alluded to it, but the top cover should be firmly held down, possibly with a heavier brick, or in some cases you use a bungee cord or something like that. But how many of you remember Ike going through here last year?
Oh yeah.
If you had a bee yard out in the country someplace and you don't check on them very often, what happens when something like Ike goes through is trees fall, but not only do trees fall, your hives are subjected to whatever forces of wind are out there. Could even knock your hive over if it's not really leveled and solidly set on the ground, which, you know, you should always check to make sure your hive is not a leaning tower of Pisa. Okay? I know of a guy, he was a beginning beekeeper last year, this is his second year. He had his hive setting on a hill and hadn't checked on his hives for 3 or 4 days, and went down and found one of them had rolled all the way down to the bottom of the hill. Now, this isn't just like from here to my car. You see that white belting way over there across it?
Is the bee still in it?
He says there were some bees in it, but it was so tore up that it just wasn't worth saving. But it had, on one of those windy days, evidently reach that point of equilibrium where it started over. And once it started over, it just went running right down that hill. He lives in the area of I-77 and 70, in that area. And he happens to have a house that's got a real nice, beautiful view. It's on kind of like a ridge, but where his bees are located is going down the other side of the ridge. And I helped him put his bees in there, and I never really gave too much thought about anything rolling down that hill. But he has since moved his bees. So that's something else you've got to think about when you're locating your bees. What is it that I'm not thinking about in this bee yard? If I put them near a creek, flood. Even though somebody tells you it hasn't flooded here for 100 years. I've never seen this creek flood. I'm going to tell you something, you might be asking for trouble. Could the bees fall over? And if they fall over, are they sitting close to a hillside where they'll roll down the hill? But back to Ike, top covers in this area, there are people who could not find their top covers. Top covers were just gone. And had you fastened the top cover down with a rock in some cases, it wouldn't even have helped because those winds were so strong. You can imagine what it's like living in South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, New Orleans, when one of those hurricanes or strong winds comes in. I've seen the pictures where you've got these palm trees leaning over about a 45-degree angle. There isn't anything you can do about water or wind other than think ahead and plan for it. Okay? What else can happen during the winter that we haven't discussed? Anybody had something interesting happen? Snowdrift. Snowdrifts really don't hurt bees because the snow insulates the hive, but you do need an upper entrance. And you might, clean the entrance off. We don't live in those areas like Roy Henderson lives, where you have to take a shovel and dig a trench to get to your bees. It's almost like a walled highway. You got your little trail and snow up to here. Okay.
How late do you continue to feed?
How late can you continue to feed? That's a very good question. With liquid feed, I would say up until we start getting a lot of cold days that are down into the low 40s.
That's the high for the...
Yeah. The overnight temperatures down into the 40s, maybe even to the 30s. If the day temperatures stay up into the 50s and 60s, you can still feed with liquid food. But once we get down into our highs being in the 40s and 50s, you might get most of the days below 40. And maybe 1 or 2 days where the temperature comes up to 40 and 50. You should be feeding fondant. Fondant is a solid cake frosting type of sugar. And you can get it in a lot of your bakeries. There are some bee suppliers who do handle it as well. And what you do with that, if you want to save it, is you buy it in a block and take a wire and just cut through it and make yourself bricks and put those bricks into, and when I say a brick, I'm talking about something about 1 inch thick